started, please? Okay, Chair, I can advise that we are now live streaming and you can commence the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Adult Scrutiny informal meeting on Tuesday, the 21st of December 2021. Over to you, Paul, for attendances.
No problem. As we used to do about a year ago when we were conducting virtual meetings, I'm just going to run through the membership of the committee. If members can indicate whether they are present at the meeting. So, Councillor Mrs. Cully. Yes.
I'm not used to being first. Thank you. Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curry.
Yes, here.
You, Councillor Donoghue.
Here.
Councillor Holroyd.
Yes, present.
Now, I've had an indication that Councillor Johnson won't be joining us this morning, and I've also received apologies from Councillor Brian Jones. So, Councillor Layton.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Michael Nicholson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Renton.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Andrew Scott.
Yes, present.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Chair, I also have officers in attendance, Brett Nielsen, Elizabeth Davison, Joss Harburn and Sharon Rain. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Number 2 is the appointment of the Vice Chair for the remainder of the municipal year 2021-22. And I would like to nominate Councillor Curry. Do I have a seconder on that?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Councillor Curry, you are now a member of the team.
Thank you.
Then number 3, declaration of interest. No. Okay, thank you.
I'm not seeing any hands indicating, Chair.
No, I can't see any. No, thank you. And number 4 is to approve the minutes of the meeting of the scrutiny held on the 26th of October. I assume everybody has read them. Any questions on that? Okay, excellent.
Sorry,
and
Chair.
Number 5.
Sorry, Chair. Just as a point of a procedure, if I could just if members are happy, willing to whether it's seconded and whether members are willing to accept the minutes, just on a vote on that, please.
Seconded.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I can see several hands as well, so I'm assuming that members are satisfied with those minutes. Thank you.
And number 5 is the COVID response verbal update by Josh, I think.
It is, Councillor Chair. Thank you. Yes, just in terms of an update, we already have one outbreak at the moment in a care home, and that's Middleton Hall. So that is being managed very, very well. The last actual positive test was the 9th of the 12th. So people are being supported appropriately. Just one resident was tested positive, the rest was staff. All of the homes are, not in outbreak at the present time, and there's been no reports of staffing issues at that home. In terms of our domiciliary care providers, we've got no reported cases of COVID in our 2 main providers. They're continuing to need to recruit, however, and ongoing recruitment is slow. Both providers have an embargo on annual leave, which is normal for this time of the year, for the remainder of the year, so that they can cover all calls over the Christmas and festive period. Nothing to report in terms of any contingency meetings. They're continuing on a weekly basis, and they will continue over, again, the festive period. No outbreaks classed in any of our daycare at the moment. And you may be aware that the visiting guidance has changed, and the new guidance now states that there is only 3 visitors per resident in a care home. We spoke to our care home managers across the town, and they're agreeing with families directly the named visitors. In terms of vaccination report, this was as of Friday. In residents of the care homes, 2.6 people are awaiting first dose, 3.9 are awaiting the second dose, and 17.5% are awaiting their booster. Staff, only 1.4 awaiting their first dose, 2.1 are awaiting their second, and 59% of staff are waiting their booster. The lag in the booster jabs is due to some of the care homes having to wait 28 days until after, obviously, their outbreak has cleared. And homes for learning disabilities and mental health are being vaccinated after older people's care homes. So again, that's why there's a time lag between some of the first and second doses and the boosters. So a refresh of that will probably be due later on today, but a really, really successful take-up of all the vaccines. In terms of monitoring, we continue to monitor with CQC and Care Quality Commission and the our health trust and providers, and any care homes that have any safeguarding concerns, we still visit on a face-to-face basis. Any questions?
Yeah. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Have we had much of an impact on the people who had to lose their jobs due to not having the vaccine? Has there been a massive impact on the care system that we've got in place at the moment?
No, it's been a really successful take-up, Councillor, in Darlington, really successful, and we haven't had a sort of mass exodus of staff. We've had a few people exempt from having the vaccine, and we've had very, very small numbers of staff across Darlington who've chosen not to have the vaccine and therefore have left their roles. But very small numbers. It's been a real success.
Councillor Renton.
Thank you, Chair. Do you see the booster becoming mandatory for care staff?
It's difficult for me to comment on that. That's obviously a political decision. I'm not aware of any discussions around that with the Department of Health at this present time. At the moment, it's still being encouraged to take that up on a voluntary basis.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you, Josh. Item number 6 is the mid-term financial plan. I'm not sure whether that's Elizabeth or Brett or both.
If I can start off, Chair, that would be great. So hopefully all members were able to attend the briefing that we did last week, Brett and myself, which presented an overview of the position. Today is really about answering any questions or queries you have in general, but in particular any specific questions in regard to the areas under this committee's remit. And just so there's no confusion, it's for this committee to forward any views or comments it may have on the MTFP, and in particular those in relation to the services and finances specifically for this committee, back to the Economy and Resources Committee on the 20th of January. And at that meeting, all the views from the committee, the scrutiny committees over the next month will be noted, and an overall response will be forwarded to Cabinet for their consideration when proposing the final MTFP. So it's about any comments, views that you want to feed back to that Economy and Resources Committee. Before we do go into questions, however, I'd like to update you on the finance settlement, which we actually received last Thursday. So typically just after Brett and myself had done the presentation to members. As I think made you aware, the draft MTFP was obviously before the settlements. There was a number of assumptions made. So just to give you a quick update on that. The council tax and precept levels remain as expected at 2% and 1% respectively. And it's assumed by the government that they're both increased at that level because they're included in the core spending power figure that the government have released. you'll recall we talked about 1.5 billion additional funding to local authorities in the autumn statement. Now, that's been split between 822 million in what they call a services grant. Now, that's not ring-fenced, but then there's also 636 million pounds for social care specifically. So Darlington's allocation for those two are 1.579 million and 1.162 million respectively. So very slightly higher than the 2.7 million that we put in the draft MTFP. So we weren't that far away. The difference is that we've been told that the services grant element of it is a one-off, one-year payment while they review the whole finance system for local authorities. So that wouldn't be included in any baseline protections for future funding if we did potentially have a drop in future years. I think obviously we need to have a discussion about what we put in the final MTFP, but my view at this point in time is that we would assume we would carry on getting that grant, because I can't imagine at our sort of level they would take it off us, but again, it would be an assumption. The good news, however, is that they have extended the new homes bonus for another year, which we weren't expecting at all. We had a very buoyant house building year last year, so this will net us about 1.4 million above anticipated. There's also a couple of reductions on the draft budget. Our top-up grant is lower as well. But overall, for next year, 22-23, it is good news because we have an extra £1 million, or £1.073 million above that MTFP that we presented to you last week. Whilst the short-term nature of the services grant is a little bit disappointing, I suppose it is understandable because they do want to review the whole system. You'll remember we have been talking about the fair funding review for the last couple of years, which hasn't happened for one reason or another. So they're talking about local government finance reform now, which to me is the same sort of thing. So I understand why they've done it, but it would have been nice if we'd had that guaranteed for 3 years. So overall, we have good news for 22-23, but it doesn't fundamentally alter the MTFP position that we presented to you. We've got an affordable 4-year position, but we have got a growing gap year on year. And that's all I wanted to say, really. It's over to questions from yourselves, please. Chair.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions? Councillor Renton.
Thank you, Chair. Possibly more of a comment, but considering this, the committee's remit spends the most money in the council, I think a considerable amount of work needs to be done over the next year to look into where that money's spent and how it's spent, and as much as we can, joining up with my committee, Economy and Resources. I mean, I think since I've become a councillor, certainly we've kind of stayed away from the financial aspect, and that's potentially because we feel like because it's a statutory service, we shouldn't really be touching it. But I think if we don't, it's only going to get worse and worse. And so now's the time to really lift the lid on as much as we can and understand what's happening as thoroughly as possible. So working with you, Councillor Donahue, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Curry. Cully.
Yeah, get your L's and your R's right. Yes, thank you, Chair. On page 39, and I only just noticed this, there's something for price inflation, which only appears to be happening in 2025-26. It doesn't appear as though inflation's going to be doing anything at all until then, and I just wondered why there was 1.2 million for that, please.
Brett, would you like to do that one?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. Yes, it does potentially look that way and maybe is a touch confusing. What it is that obviously the final year of the MTFP, so year 25-26 is a new year in terms of the MTFP. So that wasn't in the plan this time last year when we set the MTFP. So when the MTFP was done this time last year, obviously up to 24-25, we'd built inflationary factors into those budget lines for those years. When we get to 25-26, it's an additional year in the plan. And what happens when we actually set the budget in the council is we generally give a 2% uplift on each service area's resource that they have, but obviously in adult social care it's significantly more than 2%. So what we have to do is we have to build in additional for that additional inflation over and above the 2%. So what you would find is that this time next year we would have a similar sort of situation where in the new year that's being added onto the plan, again there will be this big lumper, and that's basically the difference between all of the inflationary factors in 25-26 and the 2% that's given automatically. So to answer your question as well, within all of the other budget lines there would be inflation already built in the plan this time last year, but if anything had changed between when we set the budget this time last year and when we're setting the budget now, that's built into some of the other pressure lines. So what you will see, for example, is that there is inflation being built in there in each of the years for the national living wage increases, and likewise on one of the other lines there is a change to inflation as well for I think it's the row above that you were looking at, so residential stroke nursing increase in the inflationary factors. So you can see there in year 2 there's £130,000 increase in inflation, the year after 300, and then the year after 231. And the reason that final year is less is because some of the increase is in the 1.2 million below. Does that answer your question, or have I not been clear on that?
Yes, thank you. It does answer it. I just wondered, you know, because inflation is low at the moment, it just seemed a lot to be lumping in 4 years, 5 years time, whatever it is. I have another question and comment. Am I allowed, Councillor Donoghue, Chair?
Seeing it's you, yes.
Thank you very much. It's a bit similar to what Councillor Renton said. This committee has, this and Children's have 66% odd of the whole of the MTFP, and nearly all of it is statutory. So we have very little wriggle room on this committee for very much at all, in my opinion. So I think anything that we do advise from this committee is basically just advisory on a very small amount of money, because everything else has to be done. That's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just really a comment and observation. Last year, the process last year caused a little bit of confusion, I think, and I think this year, I think it's so much clearer what the process is. So thank you for that. If anything, I think a few other people have alluded to this, we could have done with a little bit more detail to get into. So there's very little detail here. It's very high level, but that's just a comment. I have two questions, both on page 35 on the table. Firstly, the external purchase of care shows probably the largest increase between this year and next year, both in percentage and in number. I just want to know what the rationale is for that increase. Is it increased demand? Is it inflation? Is it due to wage rises, or is it our in-house services reducing and moving across to other providers? And secondly, considering inflation, the two lines there, which is the physical disability long-term condition and learning disability long-term condition, one remains the same, another one's a reduction. Considering inflation, I wouldn't have expected that. So why do we think there's a reduction in that service, in both of those services?
I can answer that one, Elizabeth, if you would like. On the first question, Councillor, the external purchase of care, as you rightly say, that's gone up by over 2.2 million on that line when comparing the net budget for next year with the net budget for this year. What that increase is obviously a combination of the pressures that are listed in Appendix 2 of the plan. So within Appendix 2 for external purchase of care, there's a number of pressures around inflationary increases on packages of care and a number of increases in the actual package of care in terms of numbers of people receiving care, and also the number of hours and complexity of those packages. So when you're looking at Appendix 2, you will see there are a number of fairly high figures for pressures within the demand area for adult social care. So, for example, home care increases by 1.2 million. So 1.2 of the 2.2 is the increase for home care, and then likewise the other ones that I've just referenced in terms of inflationary increases and the other pressures on there. So if you add those together, they make up most of that 2.2. In terms of the others, yes, they do potentially look a bit odd in that they haven't gone up. Those packages of cares will have been inflated by the relevant inflationary index rates that we're working on. And what we do when we set the budget for next year is where we work on various indices based on what we know now to calculate the budget for next year and future years. But there will also be a change in some of those service areas in terms of personnel. If the staffing in there, we may have changed the staffing structure within there, so it may be that some of the staff have changed, and for example, if the staff has left and been replaced, that member of staff may be on a lower spinal point than the one that has replaced them, and likewise, if we were talking about individuals, it may be that are receiving services, those individuals may be receiving a lower service in terms of cost or amount of hours, etc. Going forward than the ones that were in there previously. So a combination of the two, really. So I can confirm that there is inflationary factors built into those. It'll just be the makeup of the individual teams within adult social care, or the individuals that are receiving services may have meant that those there are reductions that offset those increases in inflation.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Holroyd.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of comments and questions, really. The first may seem less relevant to this committee. Point 28 about the percentage of the council car parks only being at 75%. Now, combining this with the issue of care costs going up, would it be time to consider the council building its own care home, for example, using that spare 25% space and taking it back in-house? I think it's something that should be considered and calculated through. Obviously, I'm not an expert to do that and what the decision would be. That and also sheltered accommodation. I know there's lots of demand for that sort of thing close to the town centre. The other thing is on point 29, are we quite confident on what the, obviously the national insurance contributions has been announced and the employee pay award hasn't, I don't think, at the moment. Are we within the margin of error? If it's higher than expected, are we confident that we can meet that? Okay.
I was going to say, I think maybe on the first point, I don't know whether Joss, you would have more of a view on the benefits of having your own in-house care provision as opposed to external provision. Obviously, from a finance point of view, we would certainly cost that up. I know there was a decision taken a few years ago saying that we would everything would be outsourced, and most local authorities did that. So there must have been a reason for it. I don't know what, but Joss, maybe if we could pass that one to you.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, just in terms of care homes, we do have capacity within the market for bed-based provision within Darlington. So we would have to do some business analysis on the need for providing something internally rather than using our current private sector beds that we commission, and we commission them at a particular rate, at a council set rate. There'll be some fluctuations in that based on people's individual care needs and whether they do attract any sort of health funding alongside that. But certainly willing to explore doing some feasibility studies to see whether it's a need, and bring that back to scrutiny. I can speak to Christine and we can look at commissioning something.
I imagine it would probably take too long for this MTFP, but
Yes.
maybe for next year, sort of thing. And if we do have kind of spare car parking space, it's worth looking at what we could most beneficially use it for, rather than just, you know, selling it off for housing, for example. I did have another question, if that's all right.
Do you want me to
Okay.
pick up your pay
Yes,
award?
fine.
Oh yes, of course. Sorry.
No problem. We've got a margin in there. The margin for error, I suppose, is our risk reserve. So if we had got it completely wrong, there is reserves there that could be utilised if it was higher. Obviously, if it was lower, it would be okay. Thank you.
Yeah. My other comment was on point 33. Well, I suppose it comes from that, the adult residential care, and whether, if the council, for example, were to instigate programmes to assist care homes to, for example, improve their energy efficiency as energy costs have shot up, whether that could help to bring down their costs that they charge us as a kind of in exchange payment, if you like, and whether that could be something that could be considered. Obviously, there could be other things that I'd be less aware of, as far as, I don't know, shared procurement, that sort of thing as well. But I would very much second Councillor Renton's ideas of looking into our spending. I know it's statutory and it has to be done, but are there any ways that we can assist to bring the cost down of that care that has to be provided, in all sorts of ways? And yeah, I look forward to you know, some transformation programs to try to, even if they're private care providers, whether we can assist them to bring the cost down, and that would be financially beneficial for us in the long run.
Yep. Josh?
Oh, thank you. If I could just come in on that in terms of cost and scrutiny, just to give you a level of assurance that obviously we recognise that adult social care has this more significant budget spend for the authority, and in terms of a level of assurance, we scrutinise this on literally a daily basis. But we do have processes in place to look at this and explore how we can reduce the spending. I think there's just two things really to say. Is one, we do have a transformation agenda, which obviously we've shared with members here, and that's very key, and it's been very successful, and we have achieved significant efficiencies and savings with that transformation agenda. I can take no credit, it was before my time, but certainly I'm continuing to implement that. I think the second thing to say is we've got significant pressures. COVID has given us significant pressures within adult social care, so that whilst we're continuing with our transformation agenda about supporting people to live independent lives and maximise their independence through a strength-based approach to assessment and support planning, we have significant pressures where people's complexities are increasing. And people are obviously got high expectations about remaining at home, but with that comes additional cost and additional support requirements. So we really are in a situation of recognising that we've created efficiencies previously, but actually now we're in escalating pressure on adult social care because of that fallout from COVID, people's additional needs and people's expectations. So I think it was just important for me to share that with you, but also give you a level of assurance that we scrutinise the budgets on literally a daily basis. And I hope in the next agenda item we'll see conversations around performance, that you can see actually where we are achieving some really good levels of independence for people living in their own homes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd also just like to second Andy Scott's comment that it would be very good if we could see some type of breakdown above the 38.9%. I will study it further and see if there's any more in the more detailed reports. I've just been able to read the overall report so far, but just to give any ideas of how, other things that we think could be looked into. Thank you.
Councillor Layton?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to thank Joss and everybody for all the amazing work they've done. The pressures must have been phenomenal over the last 2 years coming up now. So just wanted to thank you very much indeed. I also wanted to ask Elizabeth, and that's partly because I'm just not very financially savvy, but it was on the point of the services grant, Elizabeth. You were saying that this was a one-off payment, but you seem to sort of anticipate that there would be something sort of coming in the settlements in future, you know, sort of to either replace it or to sort of augment the money, the other monies coming in. You know, are you sort of basing that on, you know, sort of what's happened previously, you know, sort of, is it something that gets called, you know, gets given a different title, and maybe next year we'll get something under a different sort of category of sort of grant?
Yes, Councillor, I think the 1.5 billion was announced for 3 years, flatlined for all local authorities, and what they would have to do with this services granted all would stay within local authorities. It wouldn't be given to any other department. It's just how it's distributed. And therefore we could lose, because they could say, well, actually, Darlington, we think you get more than your fair share, and therefore we are going to give a proportion of this grant to another local authority. My estimate is that we wouldn't lose money as a Northern Authority on the levelling up agenda. So that's all it's based on. There's nothing scientific or technical behind it. I just don't believe the way that Michael Gove is talking on his levelling up agenda that we would potentially be a big loser in that. And I hope I'm not wrong.
Well, I think we all hope so as well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, any more questions? No. Paul, where do we go from here? Do we have a Councillor Holroyd? You're on mute, Councillor.
Apologies. I've just found another bit that on point 65 it mentions tackling inequality. Now, obviously, that's much broader brush than our committee. And I wonder whether there could be, I mean, I'm aware that a lot of adult social care costs will come out of inequality and poverty. And if that can be something that is a wider look at across the council as to what we can do, perhaps with the health sector, to reduce that and kind of reduce the need for adult social care in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, do we need to have a vote on this, or?
I think we just need to be very clear as to what members are recommending. The recommendation in the report is that members are requested to consider the MTFP 2022-2023 to 2025-26 and forward any views, in particular those in relation to those services and finances within the remit of the committee, which I think is what we have discussed. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of, you know, we would like to see and things like that, but I just really think we need to know whether the members are satisfied with the MTFP and in particularly the areas within the remit of this committee. I think, is that what we would be seeking to get, Elizabeth?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. It's just if there's any views or comments, I think we might have fell foul last year by saying we recommend this. I think it's for this committee to say, is there any views or comments they want to put forward via either the minutes, or if you specifically want to put some individualised views or recommendations forward.
One second, we've got Councillor Layton.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a comment. I know when we were in Health and Housing Scrutiny Committee the other day, any sort of formal votes were set as, we weren't voting at all or sort of, you know, casting any votes because it was an online meeting, and the chair at that committee said that it was he stressed that it was an informal meeting because it was online. We couldn't meet in person, and then so that we wouldn't be voting on anything. So I didn't know you know, if that had any bearing on what was going on today, that's all.
I think Councillor Donoghue did state at the start of the meeting that the offset of the meeting, it was an informal meeting. What I'll be doing is prepping a note of the meeting rather than minutes of the meeting. Essentially, they will follow pretty much the same format of minutes, but we will just be calling them notes of the meeting. And then obviously the chair and officers will get together to agree that those are a true reflection of the meeting in itself, and they'll be forwarded to the Economy and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of January. The idea is that we will then bring any notes back for ratification at the next available formal or constituted meeting of the Adult Scrutiny Committee. As at the moment, obviously, we are working best with what we can.
Elizabeth?
Yes, I was just going to say, from what I've heard at the meeting, there's been lots of conversation and lots of interest in things to look at over the next year, certainly with any potential transformation programme. But I didn't hear any specific recommendation coming from members that would be put forward. It was more views on the MTFP. Don't know if you agree, Chair.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Councillor Curry?
Yeah, I was going to say that the feeling I got is that we're quite happy with what's in the MTFP at the moment, but we would like to do some future work. So if we put forward for acceptance in the future, that we're recommending that we accept the current MTFP, but would wish to continue to do some further work to see if we can do more for the next MTFP.
Agreed.
I agree with that. Yes.
Is it possible just to gain a consensus from the committee that that's their understanding of where we're at?
Yeah,
Maybe
sure,
a show of electronic hands. Yeah, I think we're about there with the majority of members agreeing with that. Chair.
Yeah, I was trying to count them all. Thank you. Yes, thanks for that. Councillor Cully, you got your hand up? No, sorry, thank you. Elizabeth, sorry again.
No, Chair, I was just going to say thank you very much. If it's okay with you, Brett and myself will leave you, but if any members have got any questions or queries, please just give Brett or myself a call or an email and get back to you. It's not a problem at all.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye. Moving on to the next item then, which is item 7 of the Adult Social Care Framework. Josh.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everybody. Yes, the purpose of this report really is to inform members of the progress in determining a revised adult social care outcomes framework, or for short as we call it, ASCOF. And it's also to give you an overview of how Darlington is performing against the adult social care outcomes framework over the past 3 years. So just to give you a summary, the Adult Social Care Outcomes Framework was first published in March 2011, and this is reviewed annually to update the measures to reflect what are the outcomes for adults and for carers. The measures look at how well care and support services achieve the outcomes that matter most to people, and it's used both locally and nationally to set priorities for care and support, measure progress, and strengthen transparency and accountability. And it is all the performance against these outcome frameworks is published annually on the NHS digital website, and the Department of Health and Social Care also provide an annual report on the national picture, which you're then able to drill down into the local picture and Darlington itself. And it's just to note that Darlington actually continues to perform really well against these measures, and in most cases we perform better than the North East average. So today it's about members noting and what we're recommending is that members note the content of this report, and that also that you receive a further report when the revised framework is published. So I won't go through the whole document, but I think it's just important, a couple of things to note. One is that we were bringing this paper was initially added to scrutiny because there was going to be a significant change, or we were waiting for a significant change in what the outcome framework would look like. There has been some work behind the scenes with the King's Fund and with the Association for Directors of Adult Social Services to look at what actually should the outcome frameworks look like. And there's been a proposed revision of those outcome frameworks. However, and that was in late 2019. However, we haven't had any updates since of what this would look like. And therefore, that's why this part of this report is really to just give you an update on that and say we really need to come back in future once these have been published nationally to be able to give you a commentary on what they would look like, and then what that would look like in terms of engagement and activity with members of the public and people using services. So we're still waiting for that detail at this point in time. In terms of ourselves, our 3-year performance, we've given that in a summary document, I think on page 84, page 84, that Darlington performs better than the North East average on 10 of the 13 indicators that are currently set in the outcome framework. We perform better than the England average on 12 of the 13 indicators, and we perform, as I've stated, consistently well over a 3-year period. And then pages 85 onwards, you will see that we have indicated each of the 13 performance outcomes that are set nationally, and we have highlighted in yellow where Darlington stands on each one of those. And as you can see, we're performing, really well. Just to note a couple of sort of perhaps indicators that you might want to sort of know more about. Indicator Adult Social Care 019, which is around people requiring ongoing or not requiring ongoing support for re-enrolment. We've had over 50% of people have not required any support in terms of any home care following their period of re-enrolment that we have that they have received from us. So this is usually where people have had an admission into hospital, or they've potentially been unwell and off their feet. We, as an organisation, have provided them with up to 6 weeks of care to support them to maximise and encourage their independence. And over 50% of these people have then gone on to actually not require any further support. So around about, the last quarter, out of 111 people who've undertaken a re-enrolment package, 62 had no ongoing care needs. So that's incredibly positive, and that's an increase of last year. I think just other points to note is a real high uptake of assistive technology, which is the outcome framework number 241, I think it is, but Sharon will probably come in here and confirm. But we had a really high take up of assistive technology from April of around about 78, 79%. And this is higher than last year's percentage, which was 73% when we were in obviously the height of COVID and we were in lockdowns. So it's really great to see that people are doing that. And we're doing some additional work with Lifeline and with our operational teams about supporting people to look at preventing falls. Working with people to look at if they've had a fall, how they can, be supported to recover quicker, encouraging things like armchair exercises and physical exercises, which just supports really that preventative agenda and across, across Darlington. So there were just some examples, and really over to questions.
Any questions from you, Councillor Layton? You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry, I've pressed it twice. You can tell I'm not very good with this. I was just wondering, Joss, about the you're saying 50% of people hadn't required any support after their initial re-enrolment package. And I was wondering if you had any sort of understanding yet. I mean, I know it's early days. What has, you know, sort of brought that about? Is it a sort of, you know, are you seeing a different category of sort of client, for want of a better word, using the service at the moment, or is it, as re-enrolment sort of you know, sort of gathering momentum, you're getting a better understanding, you're sort of tailoring it better, because it is a relatively new way of going about things, and I just wondered, is it a mixture of both, or is it sort of you know, the sort of the way re-enrolment is able to sort of move with people's needs, and you're actually sort of perfecting it, for want of a better word? Thank you.
I think it's thank you for that question, and I think, you know, in being absolutely honest, I think it's absolutely a mixture of both. You've got people who are able to you know, care for themselves. They may be, you know, they may be elderly, they may be frail, but they live independently with the support of their community and their families. However, if they have a fall and have an admission into hospital, you know, they can lose their independence and lose their confidence, as well as their physical ability to look after themselves. There's you know, the successes around people like that who've had those experiences can often be quite high once they've finished re-enrolment, because they have that structure around them, that pre-existing structure. So there is you know, pockets of people where that's how they are independent once they've had that initial support, because they've got that framework. But I think you're absolutely right as well. Through the transformation agenda, we are honing, and I'm hoping, you know, perfecting our skill around re-enabling people, and our teams are working really hard on that, supporting people in that strength-based way. So rather than that previous concept of years ago of doing for people, it's actually encouraging to do for people to do for themselves, but we are there as a support. And what we try to do is have those really meaningful conversations with people right at the beginning of the re-enrolment package. What can you do? What are the things that you feel you can do? What are the things that you feel you need support to relearn or gain confidence on? And what are the things that you really need a little bit more support and guidance on? And that might take a bit longer. And we review that on a weekly basis with the people and their families, and so that they see a progression themselves. So I think it's absolutely right. There's some people will always require support. There will be some people who, after a period of re-enrolment, will be able to go back to how they were before. But I think it is also that we are honing our skills and our skill set, and the staff are becoming very experienced and very positive about promoting that strength-based approach with people. Yeah,
it's something I know that they've done in you know, within sort of hospital and care settings for many a year, and sort of moving away from the sick role and sort of about enabling people and actually looking for sort of the positivity and sort of and facilitating you know, people's move towards health. And I think it's been harder to implement in the community. It's not as easy to sort of have, but it's great to see, and I think that statistics are very sort of heartening one and sort of very positive. So thank you very much indeed for that.
I think thank you, Councillor. I think the key thing to add is that I think the people's expectations are changing. So they are looking at outcomes now, rather than thinking, oh, I've got a care need. And we talk about outcomes with people, and, you know, we're very passionate about that. So people's expectations are rising. And I think, just going back to the previous budget report, that's why we're also seeing that demand in domiciliary care. People very much want to remain in their own homes with support, rather than thinking, oh, I've got care needs, I need to go into a care home. That mindset is absolutely changing, and it is something that we are encouraging, because we want people within our local area to remain in their homes and be part of their community. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holroyd.
Thank you very much. Just a odd point, shall we say, table 1E on page 87, the proportion of adults with learning disabilities in employment.
Yes.
There's one odd one in Hartlepool where it's 22%. Now, I'm assuming that they're rather than that they're doing something completely different to us, they must have small numbers and it's skewing the stats or something. Or if not, can we learn from Hartlepool?
Absolutely. Yes, Hartlepool have a very long track record of supporting people with learning disabilities into paid employment. They have a number of different initiatives, and absolutely they've been a beacon really around employment of people with learning disabilities for several decades. They've got dedicated teams and resources and practice the supported employment model. So they are an absolute beacon. It's not an anomaly. They very actively promote it, and absolutely, you know, it's something that I'm passionate about. I established supported employment services within North Yorkshire, and certainly want to, it's a key outcome of mine that I'd like to look at, promoting that and increasing the number of people with learning disabilities in paid work in Darlington area. And I'm, working with economic development on that, and our colleagues across the Chief Operating Board. So absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you. I've also got another comment on table 2B, page 90, the percentage of people receiving the re-enrolment service, and it seems only 4%, which, given what we've been speaking about previously, that seems quite low. But is everybody offered it, and obviously they don't take it up if they don't need it, that sort of thing?
No, this is 4% of the number of people who are leaving hospital who take up a re-enrolment package. So not everybody who's discharged from hospital requires re-enrolment. They will be offered. People are always offered if an assessment of need, and obviously if they decide that they want an assessment of need, then they will receive an assessment with their social worker, and obviously on request their carers as well. But actually, this is a percentage of people who've been discharged from a hospital who require re-enrolment, rather than everybody requires re-enrolment and only 4% take it up.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I've lowered my hand now. I was going to ask exactly the same question as Councillor Holroyd about Hartlepool, so I've had the answer. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Yes, I was really pleased to see the table 28 on the people who are still not, who've not been readmitted to hospital. I think that just proves and shows the work that was done on the last committee that we had with the briefing with the NHS and what the council have been working together to do that, and I'm really, really pleased to see the figures and how they did improve over time. Really, really, really pleased to see that.
Thank you, Councillor Cully.
Thank you, Chair. We all seem to be really interested in Table 1E. My question is, how many people does that equate to? 5.3%. Is that a lot of people? Is that 2 people? Is my first question. I've got more. Do you want them all together?
Yes, Councillor, that's fine. If you want to put them all together, and then Sharon and I will try and get the numbers. I'm not sure we can get them today, but I have got some detail up. So the first one is the 1E around the paid employment. How many does that equate to? Did you say?
Yeah, just how many people is that? I mean, if it's a lot of people, or is it just a few people? Because as a percentage, it seems quite low. That was my point with that. Yes. And on many of the other tables, other authorities manage 100%. For example, the carers who receive direct payments, and we are at 86%. I mean, whilst 86% is good, I'd rather have 100% if bigger is better. And kind of why are so many other authorities that much better than us? And my final question relates to point 20, which I didn't understand. I've read it several times and I still don't understand it. So are you saying that the users and carers currently do a survey, and we're going to stop asking them? Because
No.
that's kind of how I read it, because they're the people surely that we should be asking first. You know, for their views on the service that they're using, and why are we removing it if, you know? Yeah, can you just explain it so that I can understand? Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to help ask Sharon to come in here with me as well. I'm looking at the details of the number of people who that equates to in terms of employment. And what I just need to be clear on is when we say 5.9%, that is only the people who are currently receiving support from us. So it might actually be higher, the number of people with learning disabilities who are in paid employment in Darlington, but they wouldn't be receiving support from us. The 5.9% is from the number of people that we provide social care for, who are eligible and provide social care. So we just need to get that clarity. But I do recognise it still needs to be higher. So Sharon, I'm not sure if we've got the details, have we, Sharon, of what 5.9% equates to? Well, it's 5.3 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't got them to hand. We do have them because obviously we use it to calculate the indicator, but I can certainly forward those on after the meeting. I just don't have them at the top of my head.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. If we can find that out, please. And I think the second question was around the different, the 100% versus us. Well, the cynic in me would say we'll maybe being more honest and transparent, but there is different approaches in different councils, and I think Sharon probably can explain that better than I can in terms of how they approach the recording of their indicators and the analysis against the indicators. Sharon?
Yeah, one of the things that will be addressed in the review of the ASCOF framework is that some of the indicators can be interpreted in many different ways. They aren't locked down as tightly in terms of their definitions as perhaps they are in other areas, particularly in terms of children's social care. So there is levels of interpretation as to how you record the data against some of these indicators, and that one you've picked up in particular is one. We had an awful lot of heat regionally, I think, in the various forums that I attend of performance people as to why we weren't performing at 100% when others in the region were. And it does come down to how they choose to record and calculate that indicator. And unfortunately, that's not ideal in a situation where things are compared nationally. So that is one of the weaknesses of the framework that will be addressed.
You need to pick their way then.
It does lend itself to continuous improvement, though, if you report yourself as 100%, does it? So obviously we will be looking at that when the new framework comes out.
Yeah. And then Sharon, do we just want to touch on the last question, which is about the user and the carer surveys?
Yeah, we've done the user and the carers surveys in adult social care for as long as I can remember now. They are paper-based surveys. They aren't the most intuitive. Paper-based surveys aren't the best way to do things now, and they were limited in the intelligence they were giving us, particularly as Joss described at the beginning of this presentation, that we're moving much more to people determining their own outcomes and having that level of choice and personalisation. And some of the questions were pretty much outdated. So what they're saying is they won't form part of the ASCOF framework anymore. I would be very surprised if whatever the government determined nationally doesn't include some level of service user feedback. But even if it doesn't, we are committed in Darlington, and I know it's something that Joss is really committed to because we've started working on it already, is to how we can really gain the voice of the people who use our services in our performance framework. So we need to look at how much of things we're doing, how well we're doing things, but the golden question is, does that have impact for the people who are using the services? So we might be running around like hamsters on wheels doing lots of stuff, but if it isn't achieving those outcomes with the people who use the services, you would question sort of the validity of it. So we wait and see what happens nationally. To me, those surveys aren't a great loss in terms of the intelligence they give us. Whatever comes out nationally, obviously, we will comply with. And if it doesn't meet our needs in terms of understanding our own population and their outcomes, then we will put something in place in Darlington to do that.
Yes, I mean, no matter what the outcome frameworks state, I absolutely, Sharon's absolutely right. I'm really keen to get the voice of the person to understand, what we're doing well, what do we need to improve on, what's been the outcome for that individual person. So as Sharon said, we're already establishing an activity around that and looking to put it within our system. So actually, we do it as something that happens naturally, that we ask those questions and we capture that data. So we will be able to come back to scrutiny at some point and be able to share with you what that format will look like and then what the intelligence is telling us. And that should inform our services going forward in terms of, where we need to prioritise, what we need to improve, and also recognise what we're doing well. So, absolutely we'll comply with what's happening nationally, but the user and the carer's voice is essential that we improve that rather than dismiss it or it be removed.
Right answer. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Holroyd.
Thank you very much. Just to come back very quickly on what Councillor Cully said, I would always caution against, if we're trying to achieve 100%, that's great, but I would always urge that if there is for some reason a reason why somebody doesn't wish to either receive direct payment or self-directed support, then they should be allowed to, there may be a capacity issue or that sort of thing, and they shouldn't be forced to manage it themselves if they don't want to. Whilst it may look better for us, it might not be better for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree.
Any more questions? No. Thank you very much, Josh and Sandra.
Thank you.
Sorry, Sharon.
It's okay. Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda then is the work programme.
Yes, Chair. So members will be familiar with the work programme report that's presented to them at each meeting. Just a couple of things to highlight, really, I think, on the work programme going forward. When we discussed the work programme at the start of this municipal year, we factored in a verbal COVID response in each meeting up to the end of this year, meaning the end of 2021. Obviously, we're still in a position whereby the pandemic is going forward. I throw it over to members to whether they wish to consider having a verbal report continue, certainly to the end of this municipal year, one would expect. I'll leave that up to members. And just to highlight, we have got a meeting of the Adult Social Services during COVID Task and Finish group now factored in for the 14th of January. I've been liaising with Councillor Holroyd in relation to a small issue that we've had with some of the work on that Task and Finish group going forward. But obviously, members are welcome to attend that meeting if they wish to. We've got a core of 4 members who obviously come to that meeting on a regular basis. But if anybody else wants to sit in on that meeting or join that meeting, they're more than welcome to. I think that's all I want to say, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Renton.
Thank you, Chair. Agree with the verbal update. I think given that we're still having small outbreaks, it's probably definitely useful to continue having those. And something to potentially add to the work programme, working with you, Chair, to put together a quad of aims for a task and finish on deep dive into the figures, just to get a bit better understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that. No problem. Councillor Cully.
Howie, man. The task and finish on the 14th of January, has it got a name? A task and finish for what? Which one?
It's the Adult Social Services during COVID Task and Finish group.
Ah, okay. All right.
I can copy you in on the meeting request if you wish, Councillor. That's absolutely fine.
Yes, please.
Yep.
And just something I was thinking about recently, training in care homes. We don't, so for things like movement, handling people, any kind of training. Do we have anything that covers that in any of the other bits that we do?
Josh? Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Cully, I don't fully understand your question.
So looking at reviewing how the training for moving and handling people in care homes, do we train people, or that kind of thing?
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yes, there is an extensive training programme on Academy 10, which external providers can access. They also can commission their own training. As part of contracts and commissioning compliance, all their staff have to have a set of training requirements, and one of those is like moving and handling, another would be health and safety, another would be fire awareness, medication, etc. So there's mandatory training that all care homes have to undertake to comply with our commissioning and contracting requirements, and also with CQC requirements as well.
Okay, so it's not something that we need to look at particularly then?
No, I mean, I'd have to probably defer to Sharon in terms of performance around falls, but all notifications of falls or trauma or injury to people, based on from a moving perspective, are reportable to CQC, to the Care Quality Commission. They then would alert us, and generally speaking, a copy of those notifications go to our contract team anyway, and then they are referred through to safeguarding. So we would find out if there was significant concerns of a care home around their moving and handling training and techniques from safeguarding. And at this point in time, what we have is we have provider concerns meetings, which sometimes escalate to executive strategy if there's a number of significant concerns and safeguardings around a care home. Now we have at the moment one care home in an executive strategy in the Darlington area. And we've been working with them very closely to look at improvements, and we work with CQC, the care home, health and safety on that, and it's across it's across both health and social care, that care home. So we are alerted if there is significant concerns.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Holroyd.
Thank you very much. I would welcome Councillor Renton's suggestion for doing a deep dive into the funding. I just wanted to highlight the item that's on the 22nd of February, the adult social care funding. We just have to make sure that those two don't overlap, because that was looking at efficient use of funding and whether we can get any more in from other sources, that sort of thing. So I don't know whether it would be worth combining them or making sure that having them as two separate items, but making sure they don't overlap.
Yeah, Paul, can we do that?
Yes, Chair. I mean, obviously, once we get the quad of aims in, we can have a look at what that specifically highlights. Yes. But obviously, when Councillor Renton and yourself may put that quad of aims forward, you might want to consider what's already coming forward to the committee.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Holroyd, that's it. Sorry. So and next on the agenda then is item 9, which is supplementary items. In my opinion, there is none. I don't know if anyone else know them. No. Oops. There you go. So that's any other questions? No. Well, thank you very much then, everybody.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Paul.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor.
Stay on a minute.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, no problem.